There's a strange paradox, whispered only to those who are finally ready to awaken. A woman becomes unstoppable the moment she stops waiting for permission. But tell me, what if the only cage you've ever lived in was built from your own forgotten worth? What if the throne you've been searching for was always beneath your feet? What if the crown you thought you lost was never taken, only misplaced behind years of pleasing, proving, and pretending? Stay with me, because when you watch this until the end, you won't just understand it. You will feel it. You will remember it. You will realize that you are a queen, and you must start acting like one. A queen is born the day she stops shrinking. There comes a moment in a woman's life when she realizes that her softness is not a weakness, and her silence is not an apology. It is a moment that arrives quietly, often after years of bending, folding, and compressing herself into shapes that made other people comfortable. She remembers a version of herself she abandoned, the version that once stood tall, breathed deeply, and dared to take up space. And in that remembrance, something begins to awaken. A queen is not created in a palace. A queen is created in the wilderness, in the places where she first lost herself and then learned how to find herself again. You see, shrinking is not always obvious. Sometimes shrinking looks like saying it's fine when your heart is breaking. Sometimes shrinking looks like over-smiling to hide the exhaustion. Sometimes it looks like dimming your shine so someone else won't feel insecure. Sometimes shrinking is simply the quiet acceptance that you must be less to be loved more. But the body remembers, the spirit remembers, your soul remembers the size it was meant to be. There is a kind of tiredness that does not come from lack of sleep, but from lack of self. And once a woman grows tired of disappearing, a new version of her begins to rise, not with rage, not with rebellion, but with remembrance. The moment you stop shrinking is not a dramatic one. It is not loud. It is not public. It often happens in the quiet edges of life, in the shower, in the car, in the mirror, at midnight. When you whisper to yourself, "I cannot live like this anymore," and that whisper becomes the beginning of your throne. For the first time in a long time, you start sitting with your truth. You start feeling your emotions all the way through, instead of numbing them with distractions, people, or busyness. You start acknowledging the parts of you that you buried, your desires, your dreams, your opinions, your voice. And as you do, something extraordinary happens. Your spine straightens, your breath deepens, your energy shifts. People can sense it even before you speak. Because when you stop shrinking, you don't just grow, you rise. You rise into the woman you were always meant to be. You rise into the power that was always yours. You rise into a presence that doesn't need validation to exist. A queen is not crowned by the world. She is crowned by her own awakening. And once a woman awakens to her true size, she can never go back to being small. Because the moment you stop shrinking is the moment you realize something radical. You are not made to fit into their world. You are made to build your own. And that realization leads you to the next truth, the one that every queen eventually understands. Every time you please others at the cost of yourself, you abandon your throne. And that brings us to what comes next. 2. Pleasing is a form of self-abandonment. For most of your life, you were taught that pleasing others is a virtue. To be agreeable, to be kind, to be easy to love, to be understanding, to never ask for too much, speak too loudly, or take up more space than what is offered. But pleasing is not kindness. Pleasing is not compassion. Pleasing is not humility. Pleasing is forgetting yourself. It is the gentle betrayal that slowly softens your edges until you can no longer recognize your own reflection. It is the subtle erosion of your identity. That happens every time you choose someone else's comfort over your own truth. There are women who spend years playing roles they never auditioned for. Caretaker, healer, peacekeeper, fixer, forgiver, absorber of pain. Not because they wanted to, but because the world conditioned them to believe that love must be earned through sacrifice. But at some point, the soul rebels, and when the soul rebels, the truth arrives. Pleasing is a slow death, the kind that doesn't kill you at once, but takes you one compromise at a time. It drains your joy. It steals your softness. It dims your intuition. It disconnects you from the woman you are meant to be. When you are constantly performing for others, you cannot be present with yourself. When you are bending to meet everyone's needs, you lose your alignment with your own. And when you become addicted to the approval of others, you forget the sound of your own spirit. A queen cannot rule if she is busy being ruled by expectations. The world does not need another woman who is exhausted from pleasing. The world needs a woman who is whole, centered, aligned, and grounded in her own worth. Pleasing is the art of disappearing, while still being physically present. It is being in the room, but not in your power. It is breathing, but not fully alive. Self-abandonment is subtle. It looks like saying yes when every fiber in your being screams no. It looks like staying silent when your heart wants to speak. It looks like being loyal to people who are disloyal to your boundaries. It looks like lowering your standards to maintain relationships that do not deserve you. But the truth is, you cannot love someone properly while abandoning yourself in the process. You cannot build a life of peace while living in constant self-neglect. You cannot step into your crown while treating yourself like a servant. The moment you stop pleasing, your true life begins. Because choosing yourself is not selfish, it is sacred. There is a love that does not require sacrifice. There is a peace that does not demand silence. There is a relationship that does not ask you to shrink or disappear. But none of these can enter your life until you stop abandoning yourself. The day you choose yourself is the day you reclaim your throne. And that choice leads to the next awakening, a truth so powerful, it shifts the entire way you relate to the world. A queen does not chase people. She respects herself too much to run after what walks away. Which brings us into the next revelation. 3. A queen does not chase. She attracts through self-respect. There is a certain dignity that rises within a woman. The moment she realizes she does not have to chase anything meant for her. She stops running behind people who cannot meet her halfway. She stops begging for conversations that should flow effortlessly. She stops forcing connections that were never meant to survive. Because chasing is the behavior of someone who has forgotten her worth. A queen does not chase, not because she is arrogant and not because she is detached, but because she understands something deeper. What is aligned will arrive, and what is not aligned will always run. Chasing is a sign that your soul is starving. Attracting is a sign that your soul is full. When you chase, you operate from fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being forgotten, fear of not being enough. When you attract, you operate from abundance. The awareness that what is yours cannot pass you, and what passes you was never yours. A queen attracts not by games or manipulation, but by the quiet confidence of self-respect. Self-respect is magnetic. It pulls opportunities, relationships, and people that resonate with your frequency, because you teach the world how to treat you by the way you treat yourself. When you no longer settle for half love, half effort, half respect, you stop inviting half-hearted people. You begin to surround yourself with those who recognize your value without being reminded. You begin to experience relationships that do not drain you, but expand you. You begin to feel safe in your own presence because you no longer chase energy that is fleeing from itself. Chasing drains your spirit. Self-respect restores it. And here is the paradox. The moment you stop chasing anything, everything begins to move toward you. Because you have chosen yourself. You have chosen your peace. You have chosen your worth. And when a woman chooses herself, the universe rearranges itself to honor that choice. A queen does not chase because she is too busy building a life that naturally attracts what belongs to her. And the moment she understands that, she steps into a new energy, a new identity, a new power, which leads to the next unfolding, a truth that shifts everything. The more you become yourself, the less you need to run after anything at all. 4. You stop asking for love when you become love. There comes a moment in your journey where you no longer look outward, with hands stretched, waiting for someone to fill the hollow spaces within you. Because you finally realize the love you kept begging for was never supposed to come from another person. It was supposed to awaken inside you. For most of your life, you might have been taught that love is something you earn, something you qualify for, something someone else grants you when you finally deserve it. But one day, often on a quiet afternoon or in the middle of a lonely night, something inside you begins to soften. You begin to hear a different truth. A truth your spirit knew long before you learned how to please people. A truth your younger self tried to whisper into you, but you were too busy surviving to listen. And the truth is this: you are not incomplete. You are simply unremembered. You were not created to beg for affection, to chase validation, or to shrink yourself so someone else might deem you worthy of care. Love is not a currency to be earned. It is a frequency to be embodied. When you begin to hold yourself gently, when you begin to meet your own needs without apology, when you stop criticizing your wounds as flaws and start seeing them as evidence that you have lived, breathed, felt, and risen, you begin to soften into yourself in a way that feels like coming home. To become love is to stop starving your heart. It is to feed yourself compassion instead of judgment. It is to honor your emotions instead of silencing them. It is to understand that loneliness does not mean the absence of people. It means the absence of self-connection. You become love the moment you choose your peace over someone else's chaos. You become love the moment you stop sacrificing your boundaries for the sake of temporary comfort. You become love the moment you stop chasing what confuses you and start embracing what aligns with you. And when you finally become love, something extraordinary happens. You stop needing reassurance. You stop needing someone to tell you who you are. You stop asking for the attention that used to feel like oxygen. Because now you breathe from your soul, not from someone else's presence. And in this shift, you begin to see relationships differently. You begin to understand that real love is not given to the woman who chases, but to the woman who embodies wholeness. When you become love, people feel it. Not because you talk about self-worth, but because you radiate it. Your presence becomes a quiet invitation, not a desperate plea. Your boundaries become clear, not rigid. Your heart becomes grounded, not guarded. And the love you attract from this place is not half-hearted, not confusing, not inconsistent. It is stable, it is kind, it is aligned, it is true, because real love recognizes itself. And when you become love, you no longer cling to what leaves, because you understand that the love within you is not diminished by the absence of someone outside you. This inner awakening leads you to an even deeper truth, a truth about protection, sacredness, and the divine walls that keep your heart safe. For love to flow freely, it must first be guarded wisely. And that brings you into the next realization. 5. A queen's boundaries are her temple walls. People often think boundaries are barriers, something harsh, something cruel, something rigid and unwelcoming. But boundaries are not walls meant to keep the world away. They are walls meant to protect the sacred within you. The heart is a temple. Your spirit is a sanctuary. Your peace is a form of sacred architecture. And every queen must learn how to build walls strong enough to protect what is holy yet open enough to let love enter. But for many years, your boundaries may have been blurry. You gave access to people who had no reverence for your energy. You allowed disrespect disguised as jokes. You allowed inconsistency masked as busy. You allowed manipulation disguised as love, because you were conditioned to believe that being chosen was more important than being cherished. But something changes when you awaken to your worth. Your soul begins to speak. It says, "Not everyone who wants access deserves access." And at first this frightens you. You wonder, if I build boundaries, will people leave? Will they be angry? Will they say I'm selfish, cold, difficult? Yes, some will. And that is the confirmation you needed, because the people who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always resist your growth. Boundaries are not an act of rejection. They are an act of self-respect. When you say, "No, I cannot carry your emotional burdens anymore," you are protecting your temple. When you say, "My time matters and I will not allow you to waste it," you are protecting your temple. When you say, "I will not remain where I am dishonored," you are protecting your temple. You are not pushing people away. You are pulling yourself inward. You are drawing closer to your truth. You are claiming your emotional space. You are clearing out energetic clutter, so your heart can breathe again. A queen with boundaries is a woman who has discovered her value. A queen with boundaries is a woman who no longer negotiates with disrespect. A queen with boundaries is a woman who knows that peace is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Your boundaries are the locks on your gates, the guards at your door, the gentle reminder that your soul is sacred. And when you finally honor your boundaries, life begins to shift. Your relationships become clearer. Your connections become honest. Your choices become deliberate. Your heart becomes quieter. Because boundaries do not create distance, they create clarity. You begin to see who is capable of loving you with depth and who is only comfortable loving you in your weakness. You begin to see who respects your energy and who only respects your availability. You begin to see who values your presence and who simply values your convenience. And this clarity leads you into a deeper form of power. A power that does not require you to defend yourself, prove yourself, or explain yourself. Because the next level of your evolution is not about speaking more. It is about speaking less and allowing silence to do the heavy lifting, which brings us gently, naturally into the next awakening. There is a language more powerful than words, and a queen knows how to speak it. 6. Silence is a queen's language. Silence is not the absence of voice. Silence is the presence of mastery. It is not emptiness. It is essence. There is a particular kind of strength within a woman when she finally understands that not everything requires her reaction, her explanation, her argument, her energy. Silence is the language of the centered. It is the voice of the grounded. It is the calm of the woman who no longer rushes to defend herself against those who misunderstand her, because she understands that those determined to misunderstand will continue to do so, with or without her words. When a queen chooses silence, she is not being passive. She is being powerful. She is saying, "My peace is too precious to trade for a temporary victory." Silence is not withdrawal. Silence is wisdom. It is the voice of discernment, the shield of emotional maturity, the sanctuary of a woman who finally understands that not all noise deserves her ears, and not all energy deserves her presence. But here is the paradox of silence. People fear it, not because it is empty, but because it is revealing. Silence reveals intentions. Silence reveals truth. Silence reveals character. Silence reveals everything that noise tries to hide. When you choose silence over reaction, you begin to see people clearly. You begin to see who becomes angry when they can no longer control you. You begin to see who becomes uncomfortable when they cannot provoke you. You begin to see who becomes distant when they cannot use you. You begin to see who remains present because they value peace more than conflict. Silence becomes your filter, a spiritual sieve through which only the aligned can pass. And when you master silence, your presence speaks louder than any argument ever could. Your dignity speaks, your boundaries speak, your self-respect speaks, your intuition speaks, your spirit speaks. People feel the energy of a woman who no longer reacts from hurt, but responds from wisdom. They feel the shift, they feel the elevation, they feel the distance between the old you, who needed to explain, and the new you, who simply understands. Silence is not the end of communication. Silence is the evolution of communication. It teaches you to listen more deeply to your intuition, to your heart, to the subtle movements of life, because silence is where insight grows. It is where revelation blooms. It is where you hear the voice within that was once drowned out by the noise of the world. When you master silence, you master yourself. And this mastery prepares you for the next unfolding, a deeper, more transformative truth. The more aligned you become, the more you attract without effort. 7. A queen's energy does not beg, it elevates. There comes a turning point in a woman's life when she realizes that begging is not in her nature. She was not designed to chase after love, affection, attention, or effort. She was designed to be a mountain, steady, grounded, and immovable in her worth. She was created to be the kind of woman whose presence speaks louder than her pleas ever could. Begging is not always literal. Sometimes begging looks like over-explaining your worth to someone who refuses to see it. Sometimes begging looks like trying too hard to be chosen by someone who still struggles to choose themselves. Sometimes begging looks like waiting anxiously for messages, for acknowledgement, for the smallest drops of validation, just to feel relevant in someone else's story. But the moment a queen awakens to her inner truth, she realizes something profound. You do not need to beg for what rises naturally to meet you. Energy does not lie. A heart that wants you will move toward you. A soul connected to yours will find its way without being told. Someone who is aligned with your path will not require your desperation to stay. When a woman understands this, she stops lowering her frequency just to maintain relationships that were never meant to be permanent. She stops over-explaining herself to people who only listen to respond, not to understand. She stops shrinking her light to remain digestible to people who are intimidated by her fire. Instead, she elevates, not to prove anything, but to become everything she was meant to be. Elevation is not an act of leaving others behind. Elevation is an act of returning to yourself. You rise to a place where validation becomes irrelevant. You rise to a place where silence becomes clarity. You rise to a place where you understand that distance is protection, not punishment. You rise to a place where you stop meeting people in the middle if the middle costs you your dignity. Your energy becomes your message. Your standards become your boundary. Your self-respect becomes your language. Your intuition becomes your compass. And the most beautiful part? As you elevate, the things and people no longer meant for you gently fall away. Not because you push them out, but because your spirit outgrew the spaces where your pain once lived. Elevation is a natural shedding, a quiet departure from anything that dims your radiance, a soft refusal to carry burdens that were never yours. And in that elevation, you discover a radiant truth. You do not need to beg for reciprocity when your energy is priceless. Your elevation becomes a mirror to others. Some will rise with you. Some will resist you. Some will resent you. Some will quietly admire you. Some will be inspired by you. Some will lose access to you. But all will see the shift, because a queen's elevation is unmistakable. It does not require announcements. It does not require applause. It does not require permission. Her elevation simply is. And that elevated energy leads her into a new understanding, a truth that shapes her relationships, her presence, and her entire inner world. When you stop begging for love, you finally see who loves you without being asked, which brings you into the next awakening. 8. A queen's presence is her power. Presence is not about how you look, how you dress, or how loud you speak. Presence is the energy you carry, the calmness that follows you, the stillness that accompanies your steps, the wisdom that sits in your silence, the truth that radiates from your being. Presence is what makes people feel you before they hear you. Presence is what makes rooms shift when you walk in. Presence is the invisible crown you wear, the one that cannot be touched, taken, or ignored. Many spend their lives trying to build external power, status, appearance, achievements, approval. But true power is internal. It is rooted, it is quiet, it is steady, it is anchored in self-awareness and self-trust. A queen's presence is magnetic, not because she tries, but because she does not seek attention. Attention naturally gravitates toward her. She does not force respect. Respect forms around her effortlessly. She does not chase love. Love rises to meet her, because her presence is not an act, it is a vibration. Presence is rooted in authenticity, in knowing who you are and who you are not, in knowing what you deserve and what you will never tolerate again. It is the absence of masquerades, the absence of pretending, the absence of emotional desperation. Presence is spiritual elegance, the kind that flows through you when you stop performing and start being. People feel a woman who is no longer fragmented. People feel a woman who is no longer divided within herself. People feel a woman who stands in her truth without trembling. Her presence becomes a sanctuary, not because she is perfect, but because she is whole. Presence is also discernment, a knowing that does not require explanation. A sense that sharpened through heartbreak, refined through solitude, formed through resilience. A queen's presence carries memory, not the memory of pain, but the memory of lessons. The memory of rising again and again. The memory of choosing herself when it terrified her. The memory of walking away even when her heart trembled. This is what people feel. Not beauty, not charm, not charisma, but wholeness. The kind of wholeness that cannot be imitated. The kind of wholeness that cannot be faked. The kind of wholeness that cannot be disrupted by anyone's absence or presence. Because her power comes from within, and therefore cannot be taken from the outside. Presence is a silent command that says, I know who I am, I know what I carry, and I am not afraid to shine. A queen moves with presence because she no longer moves from fear. She moves from alignment. And alignment is the purest form of power. This leads her to the next unfolding, a truth that changes how she relates to the world. Presence makes you unforgettable, authenticity makes you untouchable. And with that realization, you naturally walk into the next truth. 9. A queen doesn't need attention, she needs alignment. Attention is loud, alignment is quiet. Attention is unstable, alignment is grounded. Attention feeds the ego, alignment feeds the soul. There comes a time when a woman realizes that being seen is not as important as being understood. Being praised is not as important as being respected. Being noticed is not as important as being valued. Attention is easy. You can get attention through looks, through noise, through performance, through exhaustion. But attention cannot sustain you. It cannot build you. It cannot hold you. Alignment, however, alignment nourishes you. Alignment protects you. Alignment guides you. Alignment is the quiet confirmation that you are exactly where you need to be, becoming exactly who you were meant to become. A queen does not chase the spotlight. She does not crave praise. She does not rely on outward noise to confirm her inner worth. She seeks alignment. Alignment with her purpose, alignment with her spirit, alignment with her boundaries, alignment with the relationships that honor her, alignment with the path that calls her higher, because alignment is truth, and truth is freedom. When a woman steps into alignment, she begins to feel differently. She no longer feels anxious around people who once made her question her worth. She no longer clings to relationships that require her to betray herself. She no longer entertains conversations that drain her energy. Her spirit becomes selective, not from arrogance, but from clarity. She understands that not everyone can walk with her. Not everyone can meet her at her new vibration. Not everyone can access her when she is moving with purpose. Alignment strips away illusions. It reveals who is seasonal and who is destined. It exposes who was attached and who was aligned. It shows you who loves you and who needed you. Alignment transforms your entire life. Your desires become clearer. Your boundaries become stronger. Your decisions become cleaner. Your spirit becomes lighter. You begin to walk away, not because you are angry, but because peace becomes your compass. You begin to choose silence, not because you are wounded, but because wisdom becomes your language. You begin to attract healthier relationships, not because you try harder, but because you have become healthier within. A queen never fears losing attention, because her worth was never dependent on being seen. She only fears losing alignment, because her soul was designed for purpose, not performance. And alignment carries her into the next awakening. The moment you become aligned, you stop living for the world, and the world begins to make room for you. 10. A queen does not chase, she chooses. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she finally realizes that all the running she has done, all the chasing, all the reaching, was never about love. It was about fear. Fear of being alone, fear of missing out, fear of not being enough to be chosen. But a queen does not run. A queen does not chase. A queen chooses, deliberately, calmly, wisely. Like someone who understands that her presence by itself is already a gift. Chasing is what you do when you believe something is outside of you, something you need to catch. Choosing is what you do when you realize the treasure was already within you. And anything that enters your life must honor that treasure. For years, you were conditioned to believe that love must be earned through effort, that attention must be pulled through performance, that affection must be secured through sacrifice. But when you awaken into the deeper truth, you discover that real love is not a reward, it is a recognition. A queen does not chase because she understands the subtle dynamics of energy. She knows that the moment she chases, she lowers herself. She bends the crown. She gives someone else authority over her worth. So she chooses instead, not from scarcity, but from abundance. Choosing means she observes the heart, not the honeyed words. She evaluates consistency, not charm. She looks at patterns, not moments. She measures a man by the way he nurtures her peace, not by how intensely he desires her body. When she chooses, she does not choose with desperation, she chooses with discernment. She chooses with a calm heart and a clear mind. She chooses the path that honors her soul, even if that path requires letting go. And the beautiful thing about choosing instead of chasing is this: life starts choosing you back. The people meant for you move toward you naturally. The opportunities destined for you unfold with ease. The energy aligned with your spirit rises to meet you. Because when you stop running toward the world finally remembers where to find you. And so, the woman who learns to choose becomes powerful. Her silence becomes valuable. Her distance becomes meaningful. Her presence becomes rare. She becomes the kind of woman whose absence is felt like a missing heartbeat. Because she is no longer accessible to everyone, not emotionally, not mentally, not spiritually. But she also becomes the kind of woman who sees something unexpected, something deeper, something that leads her to the next realization. If a queen does not chase, then she must walk with a certain kind of inner light. Because a queen does not only choose, she attracts. And that is where the next truth quietly begins to unfold. 11. A queen does not shrink, she expands into her light. There is a quiet tragedy that many women experience without ever speaking about it. They shrink, they dim, they make themselves smaller so others can feel bigger. They silence their brilliance so others won't feel insecure. They minimize their talents because someone once told them, "You're too much." But a queen knows that she was never meant to fit into the small spaces other people assign her. She was meant to expand, to take up emotional, spiritual, and intellectual space. She was meant to radiate. Shrinking feels safe, but it is suffocating. Expanding feels risky, but it is liberating. When you shrink, you live according to someone else's comfort. When you expand, you live according to your own truth. A queen understands that her light will not be welcomed by everyone, but it will always be recognized by the right ones. She knows that some people will be intimidated by her strength, some will misunderstand her intentions, and some will envy her radiance. She rises anyway. She rises because the purpose of light is not to keep the room comfortable. It is to reveal what is hidden. And when she expands into her light, something sacred happens inside her. She stops apologizing for her existence. She stops negotiating her value. She stops explaining her worth to those committed to misunderstanding her. Instead, she grows. She grows beyond the walls of old stories. She grows beyond the limits others placed upon her. She grows into the fullness of who she was always meant to be. Expansion is not loud. It is not aggressive. It is not forceful. It is subtle, like dawn. It begins with a whisper inside you, "I was made for more." And when you finally allow yourself to expand, something miraculous occurs. Everything that once felt heavy begins to fall away. People who cannot hold your light gently drift from your life. Situations that kept you small lose their power over you. Relationships that required your shrinking dissolve into the past where they belong. Because a queen does not fit into anything that cannot hold her truth. And as she expands, she begins to attract better, higher, healthier, more aligned. But expansion requires one more thing. Something many women avoid. The courage to honor their emotional boundaries without guilt. And this leads to the next evolution of your becoming. Because expansion is only possible when your boundaries stand firm like the roots of an ancient tree. 12. A queen does not break herself to hold what was never meant for her. There is a unique kind of pain that only a deeply loving woman knows. The pain of trying to hold on to something that is slipping away. Not because she is weak, not because she is desperate, but because she loves with her whole soul. But a queen eventually learns one of the hardest lessons of her life. She cannot break herself to keep what was never meant to stay. She cannot bend until she fractures, sacrifice until she disappears, or compromise until she becomes unrecognizable. She learns that real love never asks her to bleed to prove her worth. Real love never demands the destruction of her identity. Real love never requires her to abandon herself to be accepted. There is a sacred strength in letting go, but letting go does not happen in a single moment. It happens in waves. First comes the denial, the heart begging for one more sign, one more chance, one more miracle. Then comes the grief, not of losing a person, but of losing the version of herself that tried so hard. Then comes the clarity, the soft realization that she was never meant to carry what was crushing her. Then comes the rebirth, the quiet rising of a woman who knows her soul deserves gentleness. A queen understands that not everything is meant to stay simply because she wants it to. Not every relationship is meant to last simply because she invested deeply. Not every person is meant to walk with her simply because she loved them honestly. Some people come as lessons, some come as mirrors, some come as warnings, and some come as blessings wrapped in temporary form. but none of them require her self-destruction. And when a queen finally lets go of what was never meant for her, she discovers something profound. Empty hands are not a symbol of loss, they are a symbol of readiness. Ready for something real, ready for something aligned, ready for something that doesn't hurt to hold. Letting go does not diminish her, it restores her. It reminds her that she was born whole, and she will remain whole. And in this restoration, something even more powerful begins to awaken, a deeper sense of direction, a clearer sense of self, and a renewed understanding of what she deserves. Because the moment she stops breaking for the wrong things, she finally starts rising for the right ones. And that rise carries her into the next truth that waits to unfold. 13. A queen does not fear solitude. She uses it to rise. There comes a moment in a woman's journey when she finally realizes that solitude is not her enemy. It is her initiation. The world teaches her to fear being alone. It tells her that silence is emptiness, that stillness is stagnation, that being without company means being without value. But a queen does not see solitude as a punishment. She sees it as a sanctuary, a sacred space where she can hear her own heartbeat again. After years of listening to everyone else's, solitude becomes the place where she repairs what was broken, where she retrieves what she lost, where she remembers who she is underneath the noise. Because when a woman has been carrying others for too long, when she has been adjusting herself to fit their needs, when she has been offering pieces of her soul in exchange for temporary affection, there comes a time when she must return home to herself, and solitude is that home. In solitude, she breathes differently. Her shoulders drop, her nervous system recalibrates, her heart begins to soften from the inside out. She starts to see that the loneliness she used to fear was never loneliness. It was the absence of her own presence. She wasn't afraid of being alone. She was afraid of meeting herself. She was afraid of the truth she buried. She was afraid of confronting the pain she postponed. She was afraid of admitting that she dimmed herself for people who never deserved her light. But when she finally sits with herself, truly sits, the fear dissolves, and in its place emerges a new kind of power, the power of self-recognition. And once a woman recognizes herself, she becomes unstoppable. Because nobody can deceive her, nobody can manipulate her, nobody can lead her away from her intuition. Once she has met the woman she is in silence, solitude becomes her classroom, teaching her emotional boundaries. Solitude becomes her temple, reminding her of her inner divinity. Solitude becomes her mirror, reflecting not her flaws, but her possibilities. Some people think isolation breaks a woman, but the truth is isolation builds her, not by adding anything, but by stripping away what was never hers. And in that stripping, she finds clarity. She finds peace. She finds the version of herself she had been searching for in others. A queen uses solitude to rise because she understands that growth rarely happens under applause. It happens in the quiet. It happens in the shadows. It happens when no one is watching. But her rise does not end there, because once she embraces solitude, she awakens to something even deeper, something that changes the way she loves, the way she trusts, the way she stands. She begins to realize if solitude can heal her, then peace can protect her. And that awakening leads quietly into the next truth. Because a healed woman becomes a woman who refuses to let anything disrupt her peace again. 14. A queen does not tolerate chaos. She protects her peace like a throne. There comes a turning point when a woman stops seeing peace as a luxury and starts seeing it as her lifeline. She realizes that the noise she once tolerated, the arguments, the inconsistencies, the emotional storms, were not signs of passion or intensity, they were signs of imbalance. She once believed that chaos came with love, that confusion came with connection, that anxiety was part of caring deeply. But as she grows into her queendom, She sees that chaos is not love's companion, it is love's destroyer. She begins to understand that peace is not something that happens to her. Peace is something she chooses. Peace is not an accident. Peace is a boundary. Peace is a decision she makes moment to moment, day after day, soul after soul. And so she becomes deliberate about what she allows. She protects her peace from people who bring storms instead of shelter. She protects her peace from conversations that drain instead of nourish. She protects her peace from relationships that burn instead of build. She stops romanticizing struggle. She stops confusing intensity with stability. She stops believing that she must sacrifice her well-being to keep someone close. A queen understands that her peace is her power, and whoever disrupts her peace is threatening her power. So she chooses differently. She chooses calm voices over loud egos. She chooses consistency over chaos. She chooses emotional safety over emotional thrill. She chooses alignment over attachment. Peace becomes her new standard. Peace becomes her new requirement. Peace becomes the lens through which she reads every situation. Does this person bring peace or problems? Does this connection expand my spirit or exhaust it? Does this relationship make me feel safe or unstable? And as she continues protecting her peace, something miraculous begins to happen around her. Her life rearranges itself. Her relationships recalibrate. Her energy elevates. People who cannot exist without drama slowly fade away. People who require her to shrink can no longer reach her. People who feed on conflict lose access to her emotional world. Because a queen's peace is not negotiable, it is sacred. And once she protects her peace fiercely, she becomes something even rarer, a woman who lives in alignment rather than reaction. She no longer chases closure. She no longer explains herself endlessly. She no longer fights battles that her soul has already outgrown. She lets peace shape her choices. She lets peace guide her steps. She lets peace crown her intentions. And the more she honors peace, the more she begins to understand that peace is connected to something even deeper, something at the core of her strength, the ability to forgive without returning. Because forgiveness frees her, but boundaries protect her. And that realization brings her to the next evolution of her becoming, because peace leads naturally into the final truth, the power of releasing without resentment. 15. A queen does not hold grudges. She releases to rise. There is a profound freedom that enters a woman's life. The moment she finally understands that forgiveness is not for the one who hurt her, it is for the one she is becoming. A queen does not hold grudges, not because she is weak, not because she forgets, not because she excuses what was done, but because she refuses to carry emotional poison in her spirit. She realizes that resentment is a weight, a heavy, subtle burden that slows her steps and dims her radiance. Grudges are chains. Forgiveness is the key. But forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. Forgiveness does not mean return. Forgiveness does not mean pretending that the wound didn't hurt. Forgiveness means releasing the emotional grip that the memory has over her. It means reclaiming the energy that was stuck in pain and redirecting it into purpose. It means saying, I free myself from this story so I can step into the next chapter of my becoming. Because when a woman holds grudges, she stays tied to the past. When she forgives, she liberates herself into the future. A queen knows that grudges drain her. They take up mental space. They occupy emotional bandwidth. They steal attention from her growth. She understands that carrying bitterness is like drinking the poison and expecting someone else to die. So she releases. She releases not because they deserve forgiveness, but because she deserves peace. She releases not because they apologized, but because she is done suffering. She releases not because the past is forgotten, but because the present needs room to breathe. Forgiveness becomes her emancipation. The moment she steps out of the cage she did not realize she built for herself. And when she releases the grudges she once clung to, something divine unfolds. her heart becomes lighter. Her mind becomes clearer. Her soul becomes freer. She rises, not from being untouched, but from being healed. She rises, not from being perfect, but from being whole. She rises, not because the world was kind, but because she chose to rise anyway. Forgiveness becomes her revolution, her quiet form of rebellion, her way of saying, my past does not own me, my pain does not define me, my wounds do not dictate my worth, and with every release, she steps more fully into her queendom. Yet something powerful happens as she continues rising. A clarity emerges, a clarity about what she wants, what she needs, and what she deserves. Because once a woman releases the weight of her past, she becomes ready to receive the blessings of her future. And that leads her to the next truth that waits to be spoken. Because the woman who releases her burdens becomes the woman who finally remembers her crown. 16. A queen does not beg for love. She aligns with what she deserves. There is a distinct moment in a woman's evolution when she finally realizes that begging for love is the deepest form of self-abandonment. It is not the begging itself that wounds her. It is what she must turn away from inside herself in order to continue begging. A queen never begs, not because she is arrogant, but because she finally understands what she is worth. She realizes that any love that requires her to beg is not love. It is dependency dressed as desire. It is fear disguised as longing. It is emptiness masquerading as connection. She begins to see that begging is the language of scarcity, while alignment is the language of abundance. Begging says, please choose me, please see me, please validate me. But alignment says, I honor myself too deeply to chase what does not recognize my worth. A queen knows that love should never require her to shrink, to plead, to fight for crumbs while starving for affection. So she shifts her posture, she lifts her chin, she gathers her self-respect like silk around her shoulders, and steps away from anything that forces her to forget her value. She understands now, you cannot force someone to appreciate a masterpiece if they are committed to seeing you as a sketch. And so she stops begging, not out of anger, not out of bitterness, but out of awakening. She feels something ancient inside her rise, something that whispers, you deserve a love that comes toward you, not one you must chase through thorns. A queen aligns, and alignment is quiet, gentle, confident. It is not a performance. It is not an ultimatum. It is a spiritual shift, a decision to match her energy only with what honors her heart. When she aligns, the world around her rearranges. People who were never meant for her fade like passing seasons. People who see her truth draw nearer with reverence. The relationships that remain become deeper, more authentic, more sacred, because she is no longer begging for love. She is embodying it. She becomes whole within herself. She becomes her own validation. She becomes the source, not the seeker. And this new alignment does something astonishing. It changes what she attracts. Love that is mature, love that is steady, love that is rooted in respect, not insecurity. Love that does not demand her tears to prove her loyalty. But alignment leads her to another truth, a truth more powerful and more transformative than anything she learned before. A queen does not only align with love, she aligns with purpose. And that is where the next revelation begins to unfold. Because alignment opens the door to destiny, and destiny always calls for the woman you are becoming, not the woman you used to be. 17. A queen does not live small. She embraces her destiny fully. Once a woman stops begging for love and starts aligning with her worth, something extraordinary awakens inside her. The courage to expand into her destiny. Because the truth is, most women do not fear failure. They fear power. They fear the weight of their own potential. They fear the size of the life they secretly dream of. Living small feels safe. Living small feels manageable. Living small feels familiar. But a queen cannot live small, not because she seeks attention, but because shrinking suffocates her spirit. She realizes that every time she dimmed her beauty, every time she suppressed her intuition, every time she silenced her voice to keep someone comfortable, she was stepping out of alignment with who she was meant to be. Destiny is not a grand event. Destiny is a quiet unfolding, a series of choices where a woman decides over and over again to choose growth over fear, truth over pretense, authenticity over approval. A queen begins to understand that she is not here to live in the shadows of her own life. She is here to rise into the fullness of her calling. So she stops shrinking to fit into relationships. She stops minimizing her wisdom to make people stay. She stops betraying herself in the name of loyalty. Instead, she embraces expansion. Expansion looks like standing taller in rooms that once intimidated her, speaking truth in moments where she once stayed silent, choosing opportunities that scare her because they stretch her soul, saying no without apologizing, saying yes without hesitating. Expansion is terrifying at first because it exposes who she truly is, and who she truly is has been waiting to emerge. Destiny begins to whisper to her in moments of stillness. You are meant for more. You are capable of more. You are becoming more. And she listens, not with her ears but with her spirit. As she expands, people may misunderstand her. They may say she has changed, and she has. They may say she acts differently, and she does. They may say she thinks she is better. She does not. She simply knows now that she is worthy. A queen embracing her destiny no longer fears her own brilliance. She walks into rooms with grace. She speaks with authority rooted in humility. She carries herself like someone who understands that her existence is purposeful. She realizes that destiny is not a crown placed upon her head. It is a crown she grows into. And as she expands into her destiny, another truth rises within her. Destiny demands discernment, because not everyone who started with you is meant to continue with you. And this awareness leads naturally into the next transformation, because a woman aligned with destiny must also become a woman aligned with boundaries. 18. A queen does not fear losing people. She fears losing herself. There is a sacred turning point in a woman's life when she finally understands that the greatest loss is not losing someone. It is losing herself in the process of trying to keep them. A queen no longer fears people leaving. She fears abandoning her truth, her intuition, her peace, her dignity. She knows that anyone who requires her self-betrayal to stay is not meant for her path. For years, she confused attachment with love. She held on even when it hurt. She tried to fix what was not hers to mend. She continued giving to people who only took. But when she awakens, truly awakens, she realizes that losing people is not the tragedy she once believed. It is the natural pruning of destiny. Every departure creates space. Every ending brings clarity. Every loss becomes a lesson in self-worth. A queen no longer clings. She no longer negotiates her value. She no longer lowers herself for temporary closeness. Instead, she stands rooted, grounded, whole. She understands now. If someone can walk away from you, let them walk. Their absence is not your loss. It is your liberation. If someone chooses distance, honor it. Not everyone is meant to witness the next chapter of your becoming. If someone cannot love you without conditions, release them. Half love is a wound disguised as warmth. She realizes that love should feel like peace, not confusion. Love should feel like growth, not exhaustion. Love should feel like presence, not chasing. A queen fears losing herself because she has worked too hard to return to who she truly is. She rebuilt herself after heartbreak. She healed wounds she never spoke about. She rose from chapters that were designed to break her. She learned to love herself with a depth that once terrified her. So now she protects herself with reverence. She knows that losing herself again would be the greatest betrayal of her evolution. And as she stands in that truth, another realization unfolds softly within her. She's not meant to be kept. She's meant to be met. Not meant to be begged for, but meant to be understood. Not meant to be chased, but meant to be cherished. And suddenly, the fear of losing people dissolves. It no longer has power over her. Instead, she carries a new fear, a noble fear, that she might ever again forget her worth, to keep someone who was never meant to hold her heart. And as she embraces this transformation, she steps into the deepest version of her power. The woman who is not afraid to lose anyone is the woman no one can afford to lose. But even this truth leads into something greater, something that completes the journey of all these keynotes, something that ties every lesson, every awakening, every rising together. Because the woman who no longer fears loss becomes the woman ready for her true crown. The crown she no longer wears on her head, but in her spirit. And now, as everything settles, as your breath softens, as the echoes of every truth spoken today begin to integrate into the quiet chambers of your heart, there is one final thing you must understand. You were never being prepared to become a queen. You were being reminded that you already were one. Every lesson, every reflection, every awakening was simply peeling back the layers you built out of survival, out of fear, out of doubt. When in reality, beneath it all, there was always a woman who carried a crown not made of jewels, but of awareness, of dignity, of quiet certainty, of unshakable self-respect. A queen is not created by the world. She is revealed through the way she rises above it. And maybe now, with everything you've heard, with everything that has been spoken into the deepest parts of you, you can finally feel the shift happening within you. Not a loud shift, not a dramatic shift, but a gentle one, like a door quietly unlocking from the inside. Because real transformation is not a performance, it is a remembering. You remember your worth, you remember your power, you remember that your presence is not an accident, it is an assignment. You remember that your softness is not weakness, it is depth. And your boundaries are not walls, they are gates, gates only the worthy may enter. You remember that you do not chase love, you allow love to find you, match you, rise to you. You remember that nothing in your life has been wasted. Not the heartbreaks, not the betrayals, not the moments you thought you were breaking. Those moments didn't destroy you, they refined you. They carved you into someone more discerning, more grounded, more luminous. You remember that every ending was really a redirection. Every delay was really protection. Every disappointment was really preparation. And now, with this new clarity forming inside you, there is only one thing left to do. Step boldly into the woman you were always meant to be. Not in hesitation, not in apology, not in fragments, but fully, calmly, powerfully, as a queen who finally realizes, I don't need the world to validate me. I don't need anyone to complete me. I don't need permission to rise. You simply rise. And as you rise, you will notice something miraculous. The world around you will begin to rise with you. The people who belong in your life will elevate. The environments you enter will shift. The energy you carry will speak before your words ever do. Because a woman who knows who she is changes everything she touches. So take a breath. Feel the weight of your crown, not a burden, but a reminder. Straighten your posture, settle into your truth, and walk forward with the quiet confidence of someone who finally, fully understands you are a queen. Not because the world says so, but because your soul remembers it. And now, it is time for you to start acting like one. Go, live, choose, love, stand, rise, not softly, but sovereignly. Your reign begins the moment you decide it does, and that moment is now.